Right.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the analysis of the interim budget 24-25. This is the part 3 of the analysis of the interim budget. The part 1 of the analysis of the interim budget was conducted on February the 2nd. In part 1 of the analysis, we had discussed in detail the various aspects of the public finance. That is, we had discussed about the important trends in the tax to GDP ratio, trends in terms of deficit, trends in terms of debt, and so on. The second analysis of the interim budget was carried out on February the 9th. In the second analysis, I had broken down the entire interim budget into different themes, which broadly correspond to your UPSC mains and prelims syllabus. For example, I had broken down the interim budget discussion into the basic overview of the Indian economy, agriculture, infrastructure, inclusive growth and development, external sector, sustainable development, and so on. Accordingly, in the last week, we had covered three major themes from the interim budget, which include the basic overview of the economy, agriculture, as well as infrastructure development. As you can see here, this is what we have already covered. Taking it forward, in this particular session, which is the third and the final session of the interim budget, I shall be covering the remaining themes, which include the theme of the inclusive growth and development, the theme of sustainable development, and the last theme, that is the theme of external sector. So without wasting much time, let's start with the first theme, that is the theme of inclusive growth and development. Now, before I take a deep dive into this particular theme of inclusive growth and development, let me first explain to you what exactly is inclusive growth. How is inclusive growth different from welfare approach? Having having understood the inclusive growth, then we'll discuss the different aspects. So when we say inclusive growth and development, the best definition that we have right now is the definition of UNDP, United Nations Development Program. According to UNDP, inclusive growth is a growth which benefits all the sections of the Indian society, and it is a growth in which people have also participated in the process of growth. So that way, when we say inclusive growth has basically two parts. Inclusive growth can be considered as a process, and inclusive growth can also be considered as a outcome. So when we say that inclusive growth is a process, it means that people have participated in the process of growth itself. Because people have participated in the process of growth, growth has taken place, and that growth has a outcome where almost all the sections of people have benefited from it. So inclusive growth means process plus outcome. If that is the case, how is inclusive growth different from welfare approach? Now, when you say the welfare approach focuses on only one aspect, and that aspect is the outcome. Welfare aspect just focuses on ensuring that everyone gets a basic needs, basic welfare. Welfare does not focus much upon the process. So that way, if you could think of the difference between welfare and inclusive growth, you can think of the difference as two circles, where the smaller circle represents the welfare and the bigger circle represents inclusive growth and development. That's a basic difference. Take for example, if government is providing maternity benefits to women, maternity benefits, then it can be considered as a welfare. But if government is organizing women into self-help groups, then it becomes inclusive growth. Same way, if the government is providing for cash transfer to the farmers, which is normally done through PM Kisan, then it is welfare. But if government is organizing farmers into cooperatives so that the farmers' income level can double, so that becomes a kind of inclusive growth. If government is providing unemployment allowance to youths, unemployment allowance, then it becomes welfare. But if government is creating employment opportunities for the youth, then it becomes inclusive growth. Same way, if government is providing for direct benefits transfer to poor, welfare. But if government is providing employment opportunities to poor through MGNREGA, then it becomes inclusive growth. Now, these 4 examples which I have given, they are not random examples, you must understand, because in the interim budget, the finance minister has said that women, farmer, youth, and poor, they will be considered as 4 castes. That's what the finance minister has declared. So, in a nutshell, when we say inclusive growth as a government very beautifully puts it, inclusive growth means sabka saath, sabka vikas, and sabka prayas. That is what is inclusive growth and development. I hope this part is clear. Inclusive growth, right? Now, why is this important? Because in GS paper 3, you have a topic, which is inclusive growth and associated issues. So if you want to write an answer to the topic of inclusive growth, you first have to know what exactly is inclusive growth. Without having a conceptual understanding of inclusive growth, you cannot write a good answer to that. I hope this part is clear. So keeping this in mind, let's look at the important aspects about the inclusive growth and development. We can just have a look at the important announcements in the interim budget, the schemes mentioned in the budget speech, as well as a new approach to welfare and perspective of inequality debate in India. So what we are going to do is, this particular discussion of ours, I shall be starting with a new approach to welfare. Now, like I said in the previous session, this year the Ministry of Finance has published a separate document which is called as the Indian Economy a Review. In this particular document, there is a separate chapter titled as a new approach to welfare. This particular chapter basically tells us, number 1, what is the government's new approach to welfare? Number 2, how is the government's new approach to welfare different from the earlier approaches? And number 3, what is the positive impact of the new approach which the government has adopted for the welfare schemes and programs? All of these points which I'm going to discuss now, all of these things becomes important both from the perspective of mains as well as from the perspective of interview as well. So keeping in mind the requirement of the UPSC exam, let's start with a new approach to welfare. This is the first thing. Okay, here when we say a new approach to welfare, there are different components in the new approach. Let me start discussing the first component. When we say welfare, welfare basically means the government should spend money on various social sector expenditure. Now, when I say social sector expenditure, what is social sector expenditure? Basically, it includes the expenditure which the government incurs on social services, which include education, health, housing, sanitation, drinking water, and so on. So obviously, if the government is pursuing a welfare-based approach, don't you think that the government should spend more amount of money on social sector? And that is what is the first component of the welfare-based approach of the government. Government has highlighted that it is spending almost around 26% of its total expenditure on social sector. It's like saying every 100 rupee which the government spends, 26 rupees is spent on social sector, which includes education, health, housing, drinking water, sanitation, and so on. Now you might think, ये तो कम है, 26%, right? You must understand that social sector expenditure is not the only expenditure which the government is required to incur. There are other forms of expenses as well. Take for example, India has borrowed heavily. And because India's debt borrowings is very high, every year the government is required to make interest payments. Can you guess what is the percentage of expenditure which the government incurs on interest payment? You'll be surprised to know the interest payment expenditure is almost around 20% of the total expenditure of the government. So obviously government has a lot of other things to take care of. So the very fact that the government is spending almost 1/4 of its total expenditure on social welfare, it is something which has to be appreciated. Accordingly, you can see the amount of money which we are spending on education is almost like 3% of our GDP. On health, it is 2.2% of GDP. Especially when you look at the government's expenditure on health, it has actually increased. So almost like 2 to 3 years back, the government's expenditure on health was hovering around 1.5% of GDP, and now it has increased to 2.2%. This is a new change which has taken place. This is component number 1. What about the component number 2? Please focus here. When we say that the government is spending money on social sector, government can spend money on revenue expenditure as well as the capital expenditure. And we know what is revenue expenditure. Revenue expenditure is a maintenance related expenditure of the government. Capital expenditure is the expenditure for the creation of new assets. Now let me simplify this by giving multiple examples. Take for example, education. In education, if you are paying salaries of the government teachers, it is revenue expenditure. But if you are spending money to upgrade the school infrastructure, like for constructing of separate toilets for girls, for constructing of computer labs, construction of Atal tinkering labs in order to promote the curiosity and innovation among the students, all of this will constitute the capital expenditure. Same way, within health, if you are spending money on paying salaries of government doctors, revenue expenditure. But if you are spending money to upgrade primary healthcare centers to provide for much larger healthcare services, then it becomes capital expenditure. Now, as far as India is concerned, India is spending more on capital expenditure within the social sector. Take for example, within education, we are focusing on creation of model schools which have been named as PM Shri schools. PM Shri schools are going to focus on improving the learning outcomes. Same with respect to health, we are going to upgrade the primary healthcare centers into health and wellness centers. And these health and wellness centers are now being called as Ayushman or Arogya Mandirs. Now, for example, you can just see here, increase in capital expenditure in social sector like PM Shri schools, Ayushman Arogya Mandirs, PM Awas Yojana. So this is the second important change which has taken place. Let's look at the third important change which has taken place, which is universal access to basic amenities. What is this universal access to basic amenities? In order to make you understand this, let's understand as to what used to happen before. Earlier, when the government was implementing welfare schemes and programs, government used to focus on entire village, where entire village was considered as one single unit. So our idea of welfare was that we should ensure that every village in India should have access to basic services. Take for example, earlier we used to implement a scheme called as Bharat Nirman. Bharat Nirman used to focus on number of things like construction of rural roads, provision of drinking water facilities to the entire village, provision of electricity to the entire village. So construction of roads, electricity, drinking water, telecom communication to the entire village. This was our focus, which obviously is very good. There's no doubt about it. But there's a problem here. The problem here is when we focus upon the entire village as a unit, don't you think within a particular village there might be certain households, there might be certain individuals who may be left out from these welfare services. Take for example, the entire the village as such may have got connected to the grid of the electricity, but within a village there might be certain households which might not have access to electricity. The village is having drinking water connection, but the drinking water connection has not reached the households, right? So how the government has changed its approach now? So like I said, earlier approach was considering the village as a unit, but now the government is considering the household or the individual as a unit in order to provide for welfare services. How? Just look at this. Saubhagya scheme. Saubhagya scheme provides for electrification of the households. Jal Jeevan Mission focuses on providing drinking water supply to all the households. It is like Har Ghar Nal. So rather than focusing on village, we are focusing on the households now. Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, which is to ensure that all the individuals should at least have a bank account. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana and Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. This is what is universal access to basic services. Taking it forward, the next approach is welfare to rights-based approach. Now, what is this welfare to right-based approach? Earlier, the government used to provide for various social services, but this was more of welfare oriented. Now, these schemes and programs have more become rights of the people. In what way? Think of it. Earlier, government used to implement a scheme called as targeted public distribution system, which is more of welfare. Now, why would I call it as welfare? It is like it is up to the government to provide for subsidized food grains to the people. People as such cannot demand from the government that they should get the subsidized food grains. So here people are passive recipients of the welfare services. But now what we have done? Now TPDS has gone on to become National Food Security Act 2013. And this National Food Security Act now provides for right to food, which means now people are no longer at the mercy of the government to get subsidized food grains. People have a legal right to food, which means people can demand for subsidized food grains from the government. And it being said, if the government is unable to provide for subsidized food grains to the people, then people are entitled to get a food security allowance. So just like how we have a right to food, we have a right to work under MG Narega. Similarly, we have a right to education under RTE. So you can see how the welfare in India has undergone a paradigm change, right? Coming to the next approach. Next approach is whole of society approach. What is this whole of society approach? You must have seen that the government is implementing a lot of schemes for the welfare of the people. But implementation of these schemes may have limited impact. The reason why we have a limited impact of these welfare schemes is, apart from the schemes, there are certain external factors which will determine the outcomes of those schemes and programs. For example, we are focusing on providing quality education to the children, for which we are implementing schemes and programs. But can you see the learning outcomes in India have continued to remain poor? Now, if you ask me why the learning outcomes have continued to remain poor, obviously there are reasons in the quality of education. Obviously, there are reasons in the quality of education. But apart from education, there are certain external factors which are also affecting the learning outcomes. What external factors? Like the nutrition status of the children. Children in India are malnourished, and because of which their cognitive development has not taken place. Because of which, when we provide quality education to the students, students might not be able to grasp those concepts simply because they are malnourished, simply because their cognitive development has not taken place. So, can I say that if you want to improve the learning outcomes, yes, we have to focus on quality education, but can the quality education alone improve the learning outcomes? Obviously not, because we have to take care of the surrounding circumstances also. In this case, the idea of ensuring that the children get nutritious food. That is what is the whole of society approach. Another example, we have been trying to increase the female labor force participation rate of the Indian economy. But we are finding it difficult to increase the female labor force participation rate simply because of the fact that women in India face what is called as time poverty. What is time poverty? Time poverty means women are involved in household duties, household work, because of which women do not get adequate time to take up productive economic activities. Take for instance, women are involved in fetching drinking water because they do not have access to piped water connection to the households. Women are involved in fetching of firewood because they do not have the cooking gas, that is LPG cylinder. So can I say, to improve the female labor force participation rate, obviously we have to create more employment opportunities for the women. But will that alone solve the problem? Obviously not, because we have to address the problem of time poverty. Think of it, drinking water. How will you address this problem? Can you see? Jal Jeevan Mission, Har Ghar Jal, Har Ghar Nal. Then, as far as firewood is concerned, it is Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. So basic idea is, if you want to get good outcomes, you have to focus on the whole of society approach. Next one is good governance. If you could ask me what is the main difference between a topper and a normal other student, toppers in the UPSC exam, they follow a very methodological and structured approach when it comes to their studies. Now, for example, you have prelims approaching. Now, the toppers would have a clear-cut blueprint as to how many times they will revise the entire prelims syllabus until the prelims. They'll have a blueprint as to how much syllabus they will complete every week, every month. So they have a clear-cut idea, clear-cut target, because when you set clear-cut targets, you have a complete idea as to whether you're reaching towards your goal or not. The same way, the schemes might look extremely good on paper for the government, but government has to efficiently implement these schemes and programs, for which, government has adopted the good governance techniques. What good governance techniques? For example, government is highlighting clear targets to be achieved. When we launched Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, government said that the households will get 8 crore LPG connections. That is our target. And when we achieved the target, we then upgraded the target as well. So when we set a target, we know how much more we need to work, and that is what the government is doing. Clear targets to be achieved, real-time monitoring of to what extent the targets have been achieved, and government is providing for DBT to reduce leakages, which clearly means you have what is called as the JAM Trinity. So you can clearly see here, these are some of the things which the government has undertaken. as a new welfare approach. I hope this part is clear, everyone. So, based upon this, let's understand what is the impact of the new welfare approach. Now, these are some of the fodder points which you can very well use it in your mains examination. To what extent the new welfare approach has benefited the social indicators. For example, the finance ministry report has said that because of the new welfare approach, there has been drastic fall in the percentage of people who are multidimensionally poor. Take for example, the multidimensionally poverty in India has got reduced from 29% in the year 2013-14 to 11% in the year 22-23, a large scale fall in the multidimensional poverty. And this is accompanied by almost around 25 crore people. They have come out of the multidimensional poverty because of this new welfare approach. Not just this, we have seen an improvement in health outcomes. We have seen an improvement in terms of women-led development. In particular, focus on the women-led development. And can you see here that the overall female labor force participation rate in India, which are so far on decline, this female labor force participation rate has actually increased in the last 5 years. For example, the female labor force participation rate has increased from 23% to 37%. And look at the second point. Second point is also equally interesting. So, gross enrollment ratio in the higher education. What is gross enrollment ratio? So, if you look at the people in the age group 18 to 23, gross enrollment ratio tells us what percentage of people in this particular age group, what percentage is actually enrolled in the higher educational institutions. And now this gross enrollment ratio for all India level, it has almost increased to 26%. But the most surprising part, the female gross enrollment ratio in the higher education is more than the male gross enrollment ratio. What does it mean? It means that more percentage of females in the age group 18 to 23 are enrolled in higher educational institutions as compared to the percentage of males in the age group 18 to 23 who are enrolled in the higher educational institutions. Can you see how this has led to women-led development? Apart from that, because of the government strategy of organizing women into self-help groups, we have been able to achieve the target of 1 crore Lakpati Didis. Not just that, we have been able to have improvement even in terms of unemployment rate also, and the percentage of employability in India has also got increased. You can carefully have a look at these facts and figures, and these facts and figures you can actually use it in your mains as fodder points. I hope this part is clear, everyone. So this is what is inclusive growth and the impact of new welfare approach. So taking this forward, now let's come to the budget announcements. We all know that the government is implementing a scheme called as Deen Dayal Antodaya Yojana, National Rural Livelihood Mission. Under this Deen Dayal Antodaya Yojana, our main objective is to ensure that at least one adult women member of a BPL family is part of self-help group, so that it leads to women empowerment. So that is our target. Based upon that, we have had a phenomenal success as far as women-led self-help groups is concerned. For example, we have been able to achieve the target to have 1 crore Lakpati Didis because of their association with the SHGs. Having achieved this particular frontier, we have set a new target to have 3 crore Lakpati Didis. Now we all know what are self-help groups. You know the basics. Like you have 10 to 15 women in a village who come together to form a self-help group. After coming together, every woman will contribute some amount of funds, which leads to creation of corpus. From this particular corpus, the members of SHG borrow and lend money among themselves. Apart from that, the SHGs also take up certain employment opportunities, self-employment generation opportunities. The best known examples of SHG in India is SEVA, which stands for Self-Employed Women's Association. Then we have Kudumshri from the state of Kerala. This is what most of us know as basics related to self-help groups. So keeping this in mind, let's look at the question which was asked in Prelims 2023. Carefully have a look at the question. Now can you see that whatever basic things which people know with respect to self-help groups, that dimension UPSC has not asked a question in Prelims 2023. The questions are the statements are little difficult when it comes to this particular question. In particular, focus upon the second statement. Don't you think the statement is little tricky, little difficult to comprehend and then attempt it? So it's like saying UPSC knows that you don't know about this particular aspect. And that is why, since you don't know, UPSC has asked this particular question in the Prelims 2023. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take up this particular topic of SHG as an opportunity to discuss some tricky aspects, some aspects of SHGs which are generally not known to the students. What aspects of SHGs? For example, are there only women-led SHGs? Can we have even men part of SHGs? Question number 1. Question number 2. Should SHGs be always registered with the government? Question number 3. What can be the minimum numbers of members in SHG? What are the funding of SHGs? So these 3 to 4 points is what I'm going to cover in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, let's start with the topic. After discussing that, we'll come back to solve this particular practice question. Okay, look at the prelims pointers. Number 1, generally, most of the SHGs that we have in India are women-led SHGs, which means basically it is for women. But the word which I'm stressing is basically, because apart from women-led SHGs, we also have mixed group of SHGs, which includes both men as well as women. Apart from that, we can have SHGs for special groups of elderly, disabled as well as transgenders. Now, this is something which I have picked up directly from the guidelines of NRLM. And like I said, our target under NRLM is to ensure that there is 100% coverage of BPL families. This is the first thing. Second, as far as the number of members in SHG is concerned, generally in SHG we would have 10 to 20 members generally. At the same time, in certain special cases, we can have like minimum of 5 members. But that is a special case. This is once again from the guideline of NRLM. Third one is, what is the criteria for membership? Can you see we focus on a principle called as one family, one member rule, which means only one member from a family can become part of SHGs. The idea here is obviously to cover more number of families, and the members who are becoming part of one particular SHG, they should belong to same social and financial background. This is the third aspect. Fourth aspect is registration. Now this is something which is tricky. You must understand, as per the government's guidelines, as per the RBI's guidelines, SHGs need not be mandatorily registered. There is no mandatory registration of SHGs. This is point number 1. But in a particular village, you can have like 10 SHGs. All of these 10 SHGs individually may have 10 members. Now, all of these 10 SHGs can come together to form a federation at a village level. So once a federation of SHGs comprising of 10 SHGs is formed, that federation has to be registered. And under what act should the federation be registered? The federation should be registered as a society under the Societies Registration Act, or the federation can be registered as a cooperative under the Cooperatives Act. So either as society or a cooperative. That registration is mandatory for the federation, and registration is not mandatory for SHG. Next aspect, from where do SHGs get funding money? Can you see? The first source of funding is the savings of the members, that is one. Second source of funding is revolving fund. Third is community investment fund, and fourth one is bank credit. What exactly is revolving fund? I hope the first part is self-explanatory, which is the savings of the member. Now let's say there are 10 members in SHG. All these 10 members come together, contribute money, and it leads to a corpus of rupees 10,000. This corpus of 10,000, they will use it to borrow and lend among themselves. But don't you think that 10,000 initial corpus, which is mobilized from the members, is insufficient? So in order to support such SHGs, what the government does, government provides for financial assistance or financial support, which is called as revolving fund. You must be thinking, why do we call it as revolving fund? The idea is very simple. Government will contribute some amount of funding to SHG. That funding to SHG, whatever money the government is giving, that money is in turn given in the form of loans among the SHG members. So SHG members take loans, repay back. The same money is then given to another member. Another member will repay the loans. Money is got back. That money is in turn given as a loan to third member. So what is happening here? The money which the government has given, don't you think that money is getting circulated among the members of SHGs, right? That is why it is called as revolving fund. Now question is, how much is the total revolving fund? You can see government provides for a revolving fund assistance of rupees 10,000 to 15,000 per eligible SHGs. 10 to 15,000. What is the condition to get the funding? Condition number 1, the SHG should be in existence for minimum 3 to 6 months. So it's not that you form SHG on the first day itself you will get the government support. So SHG should be in existence, and it should be in existence for at least 3 to 6 months, and only then they'll get the funding from the government. And look at the second point. Government has said these SHGs should follow what is called as Pancha Sutra. What is Pancha Sutra? Can you see that? There are 5 rules for SHGs to be followed. Number 1, SHGs should meet regularly. Number 2, SHGs should regularly save money. Number 3, SHGs should regularly lend money to their members. Number 4, SHGs should regularly recover the money which they have lent. And point number 5 is these SHGs should maintain proper books. So if a SHG is at least 3 to 6 months old, and if SHG is following these Pancha Sutras, only then the SHGs will get the funding from the government in the form of revolving fund. Taking this forward, what is community investment fund then? Like I said, in a particular village, you could have, let's say, 5 different SHGs. Now these 5 different SHGs might come together in a particular village to form a federation of SHGs. Now, under community investment fund, what does the government do? Government does not lend money to these SHGs directly. Government provides for financial support to the federation. So government will give money to federation, and this federation on behalf of the government will provide for funding to these SHGs, and that is what is called as community investment fund. Can you see the basic difference? In point number 1, which is revolving fund, government is giving support directly to SHGs. In community investment fund, government is giving support to federations, and those federations are in turn lending money to self-help groups. That is a community investment fund. Minute difference in how SHGs are getting money. So, member savings, revolving funds, then community investment funds. The last part is what? Bank credit. What is bank credit? Once an SHG is formed, once it is in operation for at least 3 to 6 months, SHG is following Panchasutra, it has got revolving fund, it has got community investment fund. So when we think that SHG is matured, then these SHGs are linked to the banks, and banks will in turn give loans or credit to these SHGs. The SHG bank linkage program is a scheme of NABARD, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. So can you see here, SHG bank linkage is the scheme of NABARD. Under this NABARD, what happens under this scheme? NABARD will give money, funding, loans to RRBs and cooperative banks. And these RRBs and cooperative banks will in turn lend money to SHGs, self-help groups. Can you see the eligibility criteria? SHGs should be in active existence for at least last 6 months and follow Panchasutra. The word Panchasutra is quite important. Limit on loans. How much loans can be given to those SHGs? Can you see? 4 times the savings of SHGs. It means if SHGs have saved 1 lakh on their own, then they can get a bank credit of up to 4 times. That is, they can get 4 lakhs. However, in certain special cases, this loan could be higher than the 4 times of savings. Rate of interest, and this is something which is interesting. The RBI has said the rate of interest on loans given to SHGs will be at discretion of the banks. And whatever loans the banks are given to SHGs, they will be considered as priority sector lending. So these are some prelims pointers about self-help groups. Keeping this in mind, let's go back to the question which was asked in prelims 2023. Can you read here? The self-help group program was originally initiated by SBI. No, not SBI. It is NABARD. In an SHG, all the members of a group take responsibility for a loan that an individual member takes. Yes. So all the members will take the responsibility of repayment of loans which an individual member has taken, which is correct. The RRBs and scheduled commercial banks support SHGs. Yes, they do support SHGs. So right answer in this particular case is only 2. Based upon what we have covered, can you quickly look at this particular practice question, MCQ number 26, and tell me your answer? All of you. What do you think is the answer to this question? Practice MCQ number 26. Sapna says C. Others? Kushika C. Dilip 26C. Yeah, Niveda C. Good. So can you see here, when you read all of these statements, the statement which is incorrect is C. Only women are allowed to be the members of SHG, not necessarily. Apart from women, we can have SHGs of special groups, which include disabled, transgender, elderly, and so on. So that is why the right answer in this particular case is C. I hope this part is clear. Taking this forward, let's move to the next topic. The next topic here is innovation. I hope all of you must be knowing the former Prime Minister, Mr. Lal Bahadur Shastri, had coined the slogan, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. This slogan was further expanded by the ex-Prime Minister, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, to Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan. Now, the present Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has expanded this particular slogan to Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan, and Jai Anusandhan. Anusandhan means research and development. Accordingly, in this year's budget, the finance minister has decided to create a new fund with a corpus of 1 lakh crores in order to support research and development. Now, why are we setting up a separate fund for research and development? Let me tell you. If you go back to the year 2010, in the year 2010, we used to spend 60,000 crores on research and development. By the end of the decade, that is 2020, this expenditure on research and development doubled to 1.2 lakh crore. Can you see in terms of absolute value, the money which we are spending on research and development has got doubled? But what is the surprise here is, if you see as percentage of GDP, the money that we are spending on research and development as percentage of GDP, it has actually got reduced in the last 1 decade. How much? For example, it used to be almost around 0.78% of GDP in the year 2010 as percentage of GDP. But in 2020, this has got reduced to 0.64. So the expenditure on research and development in terms of absolute value has doubled, but in terms of percentage of GDP, it has declined in the last 1 decade. Plus, if you see India's expenditure on research and development, it is too low, 0.64. If you look at the global benchmark, that is a global average, which is spent on research and development, that is somewhere around 2% of GDP. In fact, if you look at China, China is spending more than 2% of its GDP on research and development. Same way, if you see South Korea is spending somewhere around 5% of its GDP on research and development. Taking it forward, if you look at Israel is spending more than 5% of its GDP on research and development, which clearly shows that India is significantly underspending on research and development. This is what we have to do is improve the overall research and development, right? Apart from that, if you see the major expenditure on research and development, this expenditure on research and development can come from public sector or from the private sector. When I'm saying public sector, it means center, state, as well as PSUs. The biggest problem right now is more than 50% of expenditure on research and development is coming from the government. The share of private sector investment in research and development has been declining. Don't you think that we have to encourage the private sector to spend more money on research and development, right? And that is what this year's interim budget seeks to do. This year's interim budget has sought to create a separate fund with a corpus of 1 lakh crores. This particular fund will provide for interest-free loans. Look at the word, interest-free loans to the private sector so that the private sector can undertake more research and development. This is what is innovation. Whatever I have explained in last, say, 2 to 3 minutes, the same thing I have incorporated in the PPT. You can just have a look. The same thing is there in the PPT. So I'll be sharing the PPT right after the class. You can go to the PPT Everything is there here. So you can see the budget, interim budget announcement. A corpus of 1 lakh crore would be established with 50-year interest-free loan. It will provide for long-term financing to the private sector to scale up research and innovation in the sunrise sectors. That is a new initiative. I hope this part is clear with respect to innovation. Taking this forward, now let's look at the concept of demography. If you have read about National Family Health Survey 5, according to National Family Health Survey 5, it is being said that the fertility rate in India, this fertility rate in India has reduced to below the replacement level fertility. And we know what is that replacement level fertility? 2.1. So this fertility rate in India is now somewhere around 2. So can you see the overall fertility rate has got reduced, which means now less number of children are going to be born in India. Apart from that, the share of working age population is going to increase in the next 2 decades. The share of senior citizens in India is going to double from 8% to 16%. So India's demography is set to undergo a transition with less number of children being born, increase in the share of working age population, and increase in the share of senior citizens. And it is being said that this demographic transition which India is going to undergo in next 2 decades is set to pose a number of challenges. Accordingly, in this year's budget, the finance minister has announced setting up of a high-powered committee to address the challenges arising from the fast population growth and the demographic changes. This is the announcement. Why is this important? This is important because Prelims 2013, question on demography dividend. Prelims 2012, stages of demographic transition. So based upon this, the kind of questions which you can expect here is, you can see this question. Here I have framed a question with respect to the trends in India's demography. That is how India's demography is going to change in the next 2 decades. Apart from that, there is another important concept. This concept is called as population momentum. So this is what we are going to cover in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Do not worry, whatever I'm explaining, I have incorporated that in the form of PPT. So I'm just writing it and explaining to you so that you're able to grasp the concepts in a much better manner. So let's start our discussion here. So we all know what is fertility rate. Fertility rate basically tells us how many children does a woman give birth to during her reproductive age group. That is what is fertility rate. This fertility rate in 1970s, it used to be like 4.6, which means on an average, a woman was giving birth to 4.6 children, which in the year 2015 got reduced to 2.3. And now, as per National Family Health Survey 5, it has got further reduced to 2. Now, what are the implications of the changes in fertility rate on India's demography? We all know fertility rate and population growth rate, they are directly proportional, right? If fertility rate is higher, more number of children are born, so population growth rate will be higher. If fertility rate reduces, it means less number of children are born, so population growth rate will reduce. Take for example, in 1970s, if you see the population growth rate, the population growth rate, the decadal population growth rate was 2.6%. 2015, that decadal population growth rate got reduced to 1.3. Can you observe the numbers? Fertility rate reduced by half from 4.6 to 2.3. Same way, look at the population growth rate. The population growth rate also reduced by half, 2.6 to 1.3, right? Now, the fertility rate has further got reduced to 2. It means the population growth rate, which is like 1.3%, would now be less than 1. So the population growth rate in India is set to reduce. That is one important change which is going to take place. Apart from that, I'm pretty sure most of you know the relationship between fertility rate and replacement level fertility. Fertility rate and replacement level fertility. So replacement level fertility basically means how many children should a woman give birth to so that the present generation is replaced by the future generation. So present generation replaces the future generation. How many children a woman give birth to? And that replacement level fertility is 2.1. Right? Think of it. If fertility rate is more than the replacement level fertility, can I say the population of a particular country will continue to increase? On the other hand, if fertility rate becomes equal to replacement level fertility, population of a particular country will get stable, population stability. What does it mean? It basically means that the present generation will be replaced by the future generation, and hence population will remain stable. Population will neither increase or decrease, right? If fertility rate is below the replacement level fertility, which is the present case, actually what should happen in this particular case? Population should decline, because the present generation is not getting replaced by the future generation, so the population of a country should reduce, right? Surprise. It is being said, even though the fertility rate in India has dropped to below replacement level fertility, the population of India will continue to increase for at least next 2 decades. Population of India is not going to reduce. Population of India is going to increase at least for next 2 decades. Probably after 2 decades, we could see a decline in the population. Now, think of it. Fertility rate is below replacement level fertility. So how will population of a country or population of India continue to grow? Now, this is something which is interesting. Let's try to understand how will population of India continue to grow. For that, you have to know our demography, that is the age composition in India. Based upon the age composition, you have people in different age group: 0 to 18, 19 to 59, and greater than 60. If you see, in the year 2011, the share of people in the age group 0 to 18 was 41%. 19 to 59, which is the working age population, is 51. Greater than 60 is 8%. This is the age composition in the year 2011. By 2041, this age composition is set to undergo change. Change kaise? See here, fertility rate has got reduced. Because the fertility rate has got reduced, what do you think will happen to this share of population? 0 to 18, obviously reduce. And it is being said it will reduce to 25%. 19 to 59, the working age population. This working age population is set to increase in the next 2 decades. Why will it increase? Because people in this particular age group will move to the next age group, because of which this particular age group population will be 59%. Same way, in next 2 decades, can I say more number of people from this age group will move to the next age group, which means this share of senior citizens, can you see what is going to happen? Double, 8 to 16%. But coming back to our question, how will population of India continue to increase even though fertility rate is below replacement level fertility? It is being said that in next 2 decades, more number of people will move from this particular age group to the next age group. And please concentrate on this particular age group, 19 to 59. When you concentrate on this particular age group, 19 to 59, we know this is the working age group. Apart from the working age group, this particular age group, especially among the women, this is the women who are in the reproductive age, right? These are the women who are going to give birth to children. Now it is being said that in next 2 decades, the overall percentage of women, or will have more number of women in the reproductive age group. Because we'll have more number of women in the reproductive age group, these women will give more births to children. And because they are giving more births to children, the population of India may continue to increase at least for next 2 decades. So it's like the women who are in this particular age group, 19 to 59, yes, they will probably give birth to less number of children. That is for sure. But we'll have more number of mothers in India. Because we have more number of mothers in the age group 19 to 59, more number of mothers means more children means population will going to increase. Now this concept which I've explained to you, this concept is called as population momentum. Population momentum in simple words means the fertility rate has dropped to below replacement level fertility. In spite of this, the population will continue to increase. Why? Because we would have more number of women in the reproductive age group. So these women in the reproductive age group, per women, they are giving birth to less number of children. But the thing is, we have more number of women. That is why the population is going to increase at least for next 2 decades. Beyond next 2 decades, this might not happen because these women in the age group 19 to 59, they'll move to the next age group. So that is what is population momentum. I hope this part is clear with respect to population momentum. Yes, please let me know if you have any doubts. Okay. Fine. Having understood this, let's look at the question. Let's look at the question number 27. Please have a look at the question. Consider the following statements related to the trends in Indian demography. The fertility rate in some of the Indian states has reached below the replacement level fertility. Yes, it has reached below the replacement level fertility, especially in some of the southern states. So this is obviously correct. The share of working age population is set to reduce within the next 2 decades. No. In next 2 decades, the share of working age population is going to increase. The share of people in the age group greater than 60 is set to double in the next 2 decades. Yes. So that's why the right answer in this particular case is only 2. Have a look at the practice question number 28, all of you. Raghavendra Kumar, replacement rate, like I explained to you, means how many children should a woman give birth to so that the present generation is replaced by the future generation. And that should be ideally 2.1. If women on an average is giving birth to 2 children, don't you think the present generation of mother and father, they will be replaced by the next generation? I hope it is clear, Raghavendra Kumar. Okay, when you see the practice MCQ number 28, it means continued growth of a population even after fertility rates have declined to replacement level fertility. That is what is population momentum. Look at the mains question for practice. The government needs to reorient its socio-economic policies to handle the demographic transition in the next 2 decades. And that is basically the mandate of this particular committee. And whatever I've explained to you, it is there in the slide. I hope you should be able to go through that. I have incorporated everything. Okay, I've explained to you. Please go through that. So this is how the demographic transition is going to change. The demography of India is going to change, and based upon that, you should know how should government change its policies to handle this demographic transition. Answer is pretty simple. The share of children in the age group 0 to 19 is going to reduce from 41% to 25%. So because we are going to have less number of children in India, what should be our priority? Priority number 1, we should focus on maternal health in order to reduce the problem of hunger and malnutrition among the children. Second, consolidation of schools. It being said that because we would have less number of children, we should not build more schools. We don't need more schools because less number of children are going to be born. Rather than building more schools, we should focus on improving the learning outcomes, the quality of education. Apart from improving the learning outcomes, we should also go for consolidation of schools. What is consolidation? Let's say there is an area of 5 kilometer. In that area of 5 kilometer, let's say we have 3 schools. What we can do, those 3 schools can be brought together under one big school. They can be merged to form one big school. So instead of having multiple schools, instead of having multiple small schools, we can have one big large school. We have to focus on enhancing the gross enrollment ratio in the higher education. We should ensure that these people are getting enrolled in the higher educational institutions. As far as the people in the age group 20 to 59 is concerned, we should focus on skilling those people. We should create more employment opportunities to these people, right? And as far as the people in the age group greater than 60 is concerned, that is the senior citizens, what we should do, look at this, increase the age of retirement. In India, the average life expectancy has increased. Because the average life expectancy has increased, we can say that now the age of retirement should also get increased, because this will enable the senior citizens to contribute more to the economy even after the age of 60. So we should not consider senior citizens as a burden. We can start considering them as assets who can contribute to the growth of economy. And we should also focus on upgradation of healthcare facilities. In particular, if you look at our healthcare infrastructure is more geared to meet the needs of women and children. Now there is a time to fine-tune our healthcare architecture, our healthcare structure, to meet the needs of senior citizens as well. This is how the government should change its policies in order to handle the demographic transition. I hope this part is clear, right? Now let's take up the next one, that is health. Now you can see with respect to health, you have 3 major announcements. Announcement number 1, government is set to introduce a vaccination for cervical cancer. Secondly, remember during COVID-19 pandemic, government had focused on creation of a separate platform called as CoWIN platform. The CoWIN platform was an open source platform which enabled the government in order to keep a track of the vaccination coverage of COVID. Just like that, the government is now going to build a separate platform called as UWIN platform. This UWIN platform is going to be on the line similar to CoWIN platform, but this platform will be used for managing the immunization program under Mission Indradhanush. And third major announcement, Ayushman Bharat has now been expanded to all the ASHA workers, Anganwadi workers, as well as helpers. As far as this topic of health is concerned, you can see what way questions have been asked in the previous year prelims. You can see prelims 2016, we had Mission Indradhanush. And the answer to Mission Indradhanush launched by Government of India pertains to immunization of children as well as pregnant women. Prelims 2022 consider the following: Arogya Setu, Cowin, DigiLocker, and Diksha. Which of the above are built on the top of open source digital platforms? Now, what is open source platform? Open source platform basically means the source code of these platforms is available in the public domain. Because the source code is available in the public domain, we can edit the source code and we can integrate these things into your own mobile apps. And that is what the private sector had done as far as these Cowin was concerned. So if you look at the right answer is all four. Now, with respect to this announcement, you should just know about Mission Indradhanush. What should you know under Mission Indradhanush? You should know what is the mandate of Mission Indradhanush, what are the vaccines which are covered under Mission Indradhanush, and what is our target. If you know these three things, that is more than sufficient. What way question can be asked in the prelims? They might ask you a question like, which among the following vaccines are covered under the Mission Indradhanush? Can you see, these is just a fact. You just have to mug it up. You just have to remember it. Just try to remember the list of vaccines covered under Mission Indradhanush, and also remember the target. The target is to have 90% immunization coverage. So this is about health. Now coming to important schemes announced in the budget. One important scheme, not announced, mentioned in the budget, I'm sorry. Schemes mentioned in the budget. While delivering her budget speech, the finance minister made a mention of Pradhan Mantri Jan Man. Pradhan Mantri Jan Man, as you can see, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Man stands for Pradhan Mantri Janjati Adivasi Nyaya Maha Abhiyan. So that is what is Jan Man. Now this Pradhan Mantri Jan Man is to address the needs of particularly vulnerable tribal groups, that is PVTGs. It is addressing the needs of PVTGs. And I hope you must be knowing what exactly are PVTGs. So we know the tribal population face number of problems with respect to lack of access to education, health, road connectivity, and so on. But within the tribal population, there are certain tribals who are more economically and socially backward. These tribal groups are identified by the government and they are given the status of particularly vulnerable tribal groups. What is the criteria for identifying PVTGs? Please have a look at the criteria. Pre-agriculture level of technology, which means the kind of, the tools which they use, the kind of the technology which they use in their day-to-day life, it is very old technology. Low level of literacy, economic backwardness, and declining or stagnant population. Now, if you ask me, sir, should I remember these criteria? Yes. Look at the question asked in Prelims 2019. Second statement. A stagnant or declining population is one of the criteria for determining PVTG status. Yes, it is correct. Same way. What is the present status? Right now we have 75 PVTGs across 18 states and 1 union territory of Andaman and Nicobar. PVTGs reside in 18 states and 1 union territory, which is correct. Taking this forward, state which has the highest number of PVTGs. Can you see how many PVTGs we have in India? 75 PVTGs. Out of these 75 PVTGs, the maximum number of PVTGs is in the state of Odisha. Please remember that. The state which has the highest population of PVTGs. Can you see the difference here? This says highest number of PVTGs, which is like out of these 75 PVTGs, where are the maximum number of PVTGs? But the second one, highest population of PVTGs in absolute value, in which state? Right now, as per the government sources, the government has provided the data that the state of MP and Chhattisgarh together account for the highest population. So it was a data which the government had provided before Chhattisgarh actually got separated from Madhya Pradesh, and even now we are referring to the same data. So as far as prelims examination is concerned, please remember Odisha has the highest number of PVTGs, but it does not has the highest population of PVTGs. Next one. Mandate of PM Janman scheme. So you must see that these PVTGs, they are staying in a particular habitation. These habitation might not have the road connectivity. They might not have the school infrastructure, the healthcare infrastructure, electricity, drinking water, and so on. So in order to provide a host of social services to these tribal habitations, don't you think we have to provide for active coordination between multiple ministries and departments? What coordination? The Ministry of Rural Development should focus on construction of rural roads under Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Ministry of Jal Shakti should focus on provision of drinking water. The Ministry of Power should focus on electrification of tribal households under Saubhagya scheme. So if you want to provide for social services, different ministries and departments should come together and provide for services. Coordination is a key here. So based upon that, what we are doing under this PM Janman, we are providing interministerial convergence of 9 ministries and coverage of schemes in all the PVTG habitations. But there should be one ministry, which should be the nodal ministry to achieve that coordination. And that ministry is Ministry of Tribal Affairs. These are the basic things which you should know with respect to Janman. Based upon that, look at the question asked in Prelims 2019. First 2 statements are correct. Third statement is incorrect because we do not have the 95 PVTGs. Fourth, okay, if you look at statement 1 and 2, so you have 1, 2 and 4. So if you know the first 2 statements are correct, then you can actually guess the answer to 1, 2 and 4 by eliminating the option in which you have 3. That is how you could get the right answer. Based upon that, please have a look at the practice MCQ number 29. Odisha has the highest population, highest number of PVTGs in India, which as we discussed is correct. Maharashtra has the highest population of PVTGs, incorrect. Among the PVTGs, Saharias have the highest population. Yes, please remember, Saharias are PVTGs in the state of MP and Chhattisgarh, and they have the largest population among all the PVTGs. So the right answer in this particular case is only 2. That is how you can get the right answer. Similar to this particular scheme, Pradhan Mantri Janman, you have other schemes which are mentioned in the budget, like Pradhan Mantri Vishwakarma. Not just Pradhan Mantri Vishwakarma, you have Pradhan Mantri Swanidhi. Then we have Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana. So what I have done to make your job easier, I have compiled all the necessary information about these schemes and programs in the PPT. Please go through these PPT because it's very, very factual. There is nothing much to be explained in these schemes and programs. So please go to these schemes and programs, and after going through these schemes and programs, in order to check whether you have understood that particular scheme and program or not, I have incorporated the practice-based questions. Please attempt those practice-based questions so that you know whether you have understood the topic or not. I hope this part is clear. Everyone, right? Okay, fine. Now, keeping this as a background, we are going to move to the next topic now. The next topic, which is important, is perspective on inequality debate in India. What is this perspective on inequality debate in India? This time, the Office of Chief Economic Advisor has published a document called as Re-Examining Narratives. In that particular document, there's a separate chapter which is actually titled as Perspective on Inequality Debate in India. This is a separate chapter. In this particular chapter, the Office of Chief Economic Advisor has actually highlighted as to whether India should focus on reducing income inequality or should it focus on increasing the GDP growth. So it is being said that we cannot pursue both the two things together, that is increasing GDP and reducing income inequality. So what should be India's priority? That is what is this particular topic all about. So based upon that, Saura committee is the largest. Saura committee is from not, okay, if you look at the question there, here are not mentioned in state at all. I've just said among the PBTGs, I've not mentioned the state. Among the PBTGs, the Saharias have the highest population. This is as per the Ministry of Tribal Affairs document. They have said Saharias account for the highest population. Okay. So what things become important here? You can see, number one, we'll cover how is inequality measured in India, or for that matter, any economy. To measure inequality, we have a concept of Lorenz curve and Gini coefficient. Apart from that, we have the Hoover index, Palma ratio. Then secondly, we'll understand what is the actual relationship between GDP and inequality. What is the trend in income inequality in India? And what should India do given the fact that India cannot reduce inequality and pursue the increase in GDP growth simultaneously? This is what we are going to cover one by one. Why is it important? Look at the question asked in Mains 2022. Is inclusive growth possible under market economy? State the significance of financial inclusion in achieving economic growth in India. Mains 2022, 10 marks. Based upon that, I have framed a question which is likely to be asked in mains. The question here is, interestingly, reduction in poverty rather than inequality is the litmus test of inclusive growth, argue. Which basically says that when we say inclusive growth, our main focus should be on reducing poverty rather than inequality. This is an interesting topic. That is what we're going to cover. Once we cover these topics, obviously we'll take up some prelims based questions for practice. And you can see the prelims based questions for practice are 4 questions. 31, 32, 33, 34. So we have 4 prelims based questions for practice. What we'll do is we'll start with the first dimension. The first dimension is how do you measure the income inequality in a country? That is the Lorenz curve and Gini coefficient. So let's start with this. When we say Lorenz curve, the Lorenz curve is a graphical representation of distribution of income and wealth in a particular country. So it basically tells us how is income, how is wealth distributed across the different households in a particular country. And that it shows us through a graphical representation. That is a Lorenz curve. Let me just tell you, how does a curve look like? Let's say here you have the x-axis. Along the x-axis, we are plotting the cumulative percentage of households. That is right from 0 to 100%, cumulative percentage of households. Along the y-axis, we are plotting cumulative percentage of income, which is basically telling us what percentage of income is concentrated in what percentage of households, right? Now think of a situation where we're talking about a very idealistic scenario. Idealistic scenario where 10% of the households own 10% of the income or wealth, 20% of the households own 20% of income or wealth, 50% of households own 50% income or wealth. For example, think of this: 20% households own 20% of income. Can you see both these two lines are joining here, this point? Same way, 40% of households own 40% of income. The point is joining here. 60% of households own 60% of income. 80% of households own 80% of the income, right? Now, this is what an ideal situation looks like. Think of it. If I join all of these dots, right, what will I get by joining these dots? I will get what is called as line of perfect equality. It's like saying in any country, if you come across this particular line, it means that country is perfectly equal. That is a very idealistic scenario, right? So this is line of perfect equality. And how does it look like? The table shows here. 20% of households have 20% of income. 40% households, 40% income, 60%, 60% of income, right? This is what ideal situation looks like. But we know we are not living in an idealistic world. We are not living in an idealistic society. Any country, I repeat, will always have certain level of inequality. The degree of inequality may vary from country to country, but a country will always have some level of inequality. How do you measure that income inequality? That is done through Gini coefficient, and the graphical representation of that is the Lorenz curve. Let me just show you how it is. Okay. Please concentrate here. This is what we have already covered. This is what is a ideal situation, right? Line of perfect equality. We have already covered that. But concentrate here. That is a real life situation where there is inequality. How there is inequality? The bottom 20% of households, right? They account for 5% of income. Here, 20% of households are having 20% of income, but here 20% of the households are having just 5% of income. Look at this particular graph. How will I get the points? 20% households have 5% income. Same way, households from 20 to 40%, they have access to 10% of income. Can you see? 20 to 40, this percentage of households, how much access income they have? We can just concentrate 15 minus 5. 15 minus 5, 15 minus 5 is 10%. So the households which belong from 20 to 40%, they have access to just 10% of income. I can look at it in other manner. Other manner is 0 to 40% of the households. How much income they have access to? 5 plus 10, which is like 15%. So 0 to 40% of households have access to just 15% of income. Same way, you can see here, 40 to 60 have 15%. 40 to 60, 15%. How 15%? 30 minus 15, that will be equal to 30%. 60 to 80, if you see, it will be equal to 50%. So can you see here that this shows the extent of inequality, and it is clearly showing us, if you see the household from 0 to 80% of households, 0 to 80% of households, that is from here to here, how much income they're having access to? 50%. Half of income is concentrated in the bottom 80. On the other hand, the top 20% of households are having access to 50% of income. Can you see the extent of inequality in a particular country? Now, all these points I can join. I can join all of these points. When I join all of these points, the curve that we get, the curve is nothing but Lorentz curve. So Lorentz curve is a graphical representation of distribution of income and wealth in a particular country. That is what is Lorentz curve. I hope it is clear, everyone. Please feel free to ask if you have any doubts. Everyone? Please feel free to ask. Okay, good. Thank you. So taking this forward, what we are going to cover now is we are going to cover the next topic, that is the Gini coefficient. What is Gini coefficient? Gini coefficient actually measures the extent of inequality. Lorentz curve is a graphical representation. Gini coefficient is a value which shows the extent of inequality. How? Let's try to understand. For that, you first have to understand two concepts. Area A. Area A here is the area between line of perfect equality and the Lorentz curve. It means if I could show area A is this. This is area A. This entire area between line of perfect equality and the Lorentz curve is area A. Same way, what we have is area B. What is area B? Area B is an area between the Lorentz curve and the x-axis. How will I draw this area B? I will draw this like this. This is area B. Area A and area B. I hope this is clear. So keeping this in mind, let's understand the Gini coefficient. Gini coefficient measures the extent of inequality in the country, and look how it is calculated. It is calculated as A divided by A plus B. A, this area, divided by A plus B will tell us what is the Gini coefficient. Let's try to understand. Scenario 1. A is equal to 0. What do you mean A is equal to 0? I am saying this shaded area A is equal to 0. If this is equal to 0, think where will this Lorentz curve lie? Where will be this Lorentz curve? If this A is equal to 0, can I say that this Lorentz curve will lie along the line of perfect equality? So if A is 0, the gap between line of perfect equality and Lorentz curve is equal to 0, right? So think of it. Where does the Lorentz curve lie? The Lorentz curve will lie along the line of perfect equality. The Lorentz curve will be like this, which means what will be the value of Gini coefficient? Gini coefficient A divided by A plus B. A is equal to 0. 0 divided by 0 plus B. 0 divided by 0 plus B. You have 0 in the numerator. So what will be the Gini coefficient? 0. So think, if Gini coefficient is equal to 0, can I say the country is perfectly equal? Because where is the Lorentz curve lying? Lorentz curve is lying along the line of perfect equality. I hope you're getting this point. So country is perfectly equal. That is what is our interpretation. Country is perfectly equal, which is like idealistic. Scenario 2 dekhte hain. Scenario 2, B is equal to 0. What is B? Area between Lorentz curve and x-axis. This area is equal to 0. That's what I'm saying. Area between Lorentz curve and x-axis is equal to 0. इसका मतलब क्या है? Think of this Lorentz curve. Where will this Lorentz curve lie now? When A was equal to 0, Lorentz curve was along the line of perfect equality. Now we are saying B is equal to 0. So this Lorentz curve will lie along the x-axis. Where does the Lorentz curve lie? along the x-axis, which means now try to calculate the Gini coefficient. Now the Gini coefficient will be A divided by A plus B, A divided by A plus 0, A divided by A will be equal to how much? 1. Gini coefficient in this case will be equal to 1. Think, I'm saying this Lorentz curve is along the x-axis. What does it mean? It means that entire income of a country is concentrated in the hands of a single individual, which is obviously a hypothetical situation. So it's like a country is perfectly unequal if Gini coefficient is equal to 1. So think of it, 0 and 1, both these values of Gini coefficient, they are extreme. So Gini coefficient will normally range between 0 to 1. And when I say 0, it means perfect equality. And if it becomes equal to 1, it means perfect inequality. So think of it. Can I say if the Gini coefficient increases from 0 to 1, increase in Gini coefficient denotes what? Increase in Gini coefficient denotes increase in income inequality. That is what is important here. You can see Gini coefficient of 0 indicates perfect equality, while Gini coefficient of 1 indicates perfect inequality. As the value of Gini coefficient increases, the inequality in a country would increase. Right? And what is the significance of Gini coefficient? Let's say there is a country X whose Gini coefficient is equal to 0.35. There is another country Y whose Gini coefficient is 0.50. Like I said, when we move from 0 to 1, Gini coefficient increases, income inequality also increases. Gini coefficient of country Y is more than the Gini coefficient of country X, which means which country is more unequal? Country Y. Right? That is how we will decode the importance of Gini coefficient. Country X with Gini coefficient of 0.35 would be more equal as compared to country Y with a Gini coefficient of 0.50. This is what is the Lorentz curve and Gini coefficient. Apart from that, there are some other indices to measure the income inequality. Let me just show you those things. Like we have one particular index called as Hoover index. Interestingly, this index is also called as Robin Hood index. Why is it called as Robin Hood index? It's an interesting point. Let's pay attention here. Let's say there's a particular country. In this country, let's say for sake of simplicity, there are only 3 households. Only 3 households. Wherein the income of household A is rupees 50. Income of household B is, for example, equal to 100. And income of household C is equal to 450. Which clearly shows that there is income inequality among these 3 households. Let's try to understand what is the average income of the households. How do you calculate average income? The total income divided by number of households. 450 plus 50, 500. 500 plus 100, 600. 600 divided by 1, 2, 3. 3 household. So the average income should be equal to how much? 200. I hope this is clear. Now think of it. If the average income is equal to 200, it means that every household should get 200 rupees. From where should it get 200 rupees? Like average income should be equal to 200. We have to transfer money from a richer household to a poor household, right? How much money should be transferred to this household A so that its income becomes equal to 200? We should transfer 150 rupees. From where? From this household C. To this household B, we have to transfer another 100 rupees, right? So now the total income of household A will be 200, household B will be 200, household C 450 minus 150, 300, 300 minus 100, 200. Can you see now by transferring money from one particular household, the richer household to poor households, we can ensure perfect equality. So when you see the Hoover index tells us how much income should be transferred from richer households to poor households, so that there is absolute uniformity of income distribution. That is what is Hoover index. Obviously, if you have to transfer more money from richer household to poor household, it means the Hoover index will be higher. And this is what is Robin Hood index. Similarly, we have what is called as Palma ratio. What is Palma ratio? Ratio of income of top 10% of households to the income of the bottom 40%. I showed you the Lorenz curve, right? So the income of top 10% of the households divided by income of the bottom 40% will give us the Palma ratio. This is also a ratio to measure the income inequality. Is this part clear, everyone? Sakshi, with respect to your point, that is scenario 2, which you are asking. Scenario 2, I'm saying if B is equal to 0, this B is equal to 0, it means this area between the Lorenz curve and x-axis is equal to 0. If this area between Lorenz curve and x-axis is equal to 0, it means where is this Lorenz curve lying? This Lorenz curve is lying along the x-axis, right? So if Lorenz curve is lying along the x-axis, it means it's a country where there is perfect inequality. We are simply saying that entire income is concentrated in the hands of single individual. Clear, Sakshi? Please respond. Okay, anyway, Sakshi, I'll just come back to your doubt at the end of the session. Do not worry. Okay, similar to that, what we have is this Kuznets curve. What is Kuznets curve? Now, Kuznets curve basically says that as the GDP of the country increases, you can see income inequality in the initial stages will also keep on increasing until it reaches a particular point. Once it reaches a particular point, beyond that, when the GDP increases, the income inequality will reduce. So can you see it's like inverted U-shaped, which is in a way a recognition or acceptance of a fact that in the initial stages when the GDP is growing, the increase in GDP is accompanied by increase in income inequality in the initial stages. That is why in the developing countries, when the GDP is increasing, that increase in GDP is also leading to increase in income inequality. But beyond a particular time, when the GDP starts increasing, then the inequality starts reducing. That is what is the Kuznets curve. Smita is asking why the name Robin Hood index. I hope you know it. Robin Hood because we are taking, it's like we are saying how much money should we take away from the richer people so that how much money should we take away from the richer people and distribute among the poor people so that there is a perfect equality. Okay, now based upon this, let's quickly look at the practice questions. Then we'll discuss the main solar part. Please have a look at the question number 31, all of you. Question number 31. Consider the following statements related to Gini coefficient. The Gini coefficient measures the extent of income inequality in the country. Yes. The higher the value of Gini coefficient, lower would be the inequality. No. Higher the value of Gini coefficient, higher would be the income inequality. So the right answer in this particular case is 1 only. Statement number 1. Good. Practice MCQ number 32. Consider the following: Phillips curve, Lorenz curve, Hoover index. Which among the following are associated with measurement of inequality in a country? Phillips curve. Phillips curve is a curve which shows the nature of relationship between inflation and unemployment. That is what is Phillips curve. Lorenz curve basically shows us the extent of inequality. It's a curve which shows the inequality. Hoover index also measures the inequality, as we covered. So how many are associated measurement of inequality? Answer is only 2. Right? Look at the practice question number 33. A particular curve shows relationship between economic growth and inequality. The curve is inverted U-shaped, meaning that initially economic growth leads to greater inequality. Later, as the economy becomes more developed, inequality starts to reduce. Practice MCQ number 33. We all know the right answer in this particular case is Kuznets curve, right? Practice MCQ number 34. A particular curve shows the relationship between economic growth and inequality. This curve shows that the percentage of total income earned by cumulative percentage of population. And we know the answer to this. The answer to this is Lorenz curve, right? 34th answer is D. So we have covered the prelims related aspects about the Lorenz curve, Gini coefficient, then about Hoover index, Robin Hood index, then Kuznets curve. Now coming to this important question about the relationship between GDP and inequality. Now let's try to understand this particular topic, because it's very interesting topic about the relation between these two variables. Now it is being said that a country has multiple objectives to be fulfilled. But if I could tell you the most important objectives before any country, there would be 2. Number 1, to increase the GDP growth. And number 2, to reduce the inequality. These are the 2 objectives before any country. But it is being said a particular country cannot pursue both of these 2 objectives simultaneously. Which means if a country is focusing more on increasing its GDP size, that increase in GDP size will also lead to increase in income inequality, right? That is what we saw now, Kuznets curve. On the other hand, if the country is focusing excessively on reducing income inequality, GDP growth of a country will reduce. So it's like either a country can focus on increasing its GDP growth, or it can focus on reducing income inequality. Both of these 2 things cannot go hand in hand. Based upon this, what should be India's approach? Should India focus on increasing its GDP size, or should it focus on reducing income inequality? This is what is this particular chapter discussing. Why are these 2 variables in conflict with each other? Let's try to understand that first. For example, let's say a particular country is focusing more on increasing its GDP growth, right? In that case, think what will happen? There will be increase in the production of goods and services because GDP is increasing. Now, can I say because the GDP is increasing at a very fast pace, this can lead to creation of more jobs? Creation of more jobs means per capita income of the people will increase. Because of that, we can say more number of people will be pulled out of poverty, right? increase in GDP growth will enable us to pull out more number of people out of poverty, which is quite good. But there is a problem here. The problem here is when the GDP is growing very rapidly, it would so happen that the income will not be equally distributed among all the sections of people. More income might be concentrated in the hands of richer people. Less income might be concentrated in the hands of the poor people. Everyone's income for sure will increase because of increase in GDP. But think, whose income will increase much higher, much faster? Obviously, richer people. So, when the GDP growth is very rapid, can I say, yes, good thing, we can pull out large number of people out of poverty, but the bad thing is the gap between haves and have-nots will widen. For example, you can see there will be concentration of income in the hands of richer class, comparatively lower benefits for the poor class, and hence it will lead to increase in income inequality. So a country is able to boost its GDP, but at the cost of what? At the cost of increase in income inequality. So let's say a country now starts focusing on reducing income inequality in that particular case. If a country is focusing excessively on reducing inequality and not on increasing GDP, then can I say a country will focus more on redistributive policies. What is redistributive policies? Collecting more taxes from the richer people, and that taxpayers' money is in turn used for the welfare of the poor people. Right? That is what is redistributive policies. Now it is being said, if a country in its initial stage, I'm focusing on this, initial stage of development, if it focuses more on redistributive policies, then what will happen? It is being said that it is disincentivizing the wealthy people from accumulating wealth. It is forcing the wealthy people to pay more taxes. Apart from that, the whatever tax the government is collecting, more of that taxpayers' money the government is spending it for the welfare of the poor people. It is not spending money on creation of infrastructure projects, particularly in its initial stage of development. So if you don't spend money on creation of infrastructure projects, if you tax the richer very high, it will discourage innovation. It will discourage creation of wealth. That is why, when we are focusing more on redistributive policies, this will lead to decrease in GDP growth. Can you see clearly these two objectives are in conflict with each other? You pursue GDP growth, it will lead to increase in income inequality. You focus on reducing income inequality, it will lead to decrease in GDP growth. So there is a trade-off. So keeping this in mind, the trade-off, what should India do? Should India, for that, let me just show you the example of US economy. If you see the US economy, the total GDP size of US is $27 trillion. It's one of the world's, it's the largest economy in the world. The number of poor people in US in terms of percentage is around 12%. But surprising here, if you look at US economy, in US economy, the inequality is very high. The Gini coefficient is around 0.39 in the US economy, high level of income inequality. So think, what should US focus upon? It being said, as far as US is concerned, US should focus not on increasing its GDP size. US should focus more upon reducing income inequality. Question is why? Reason number one, US GDP size is already very large. US has already focused on increasing its GDP size. Its GDP size has increased to such an extent that now there is less potential for the US economy to further increase its GDP size, which means in a large extent, can I say the option one for US does not exist, because even if US focuses a lot on increasing its GDP size, the extent by which its GDP size can increase is quite limited. So since option one does not exist, where should US focus upon? reducing income inequality. But you can learn from US economy, because the US GDP size is very large. US has been able to pull out a large number of people out of poverty, because increase in GDP, like I said, creates jobs, leads to increase in income level. So the absolute number of people who are poor, they will be coming out of the poverty. So now what should US focus upon? US should focus upon reducing the inequality in this society. Think of US society. Don't you think the US society has drastically got categorized into haves and have-nots? And because there's large scale inequality in the US economy, it is in turn causing a lot of social problems. So that is why US should focus more on reducing income inequality. What about India then? You can see, look at the size of US economy and the size of Indian economy. Deliberately I made the circle for Indian economy small, which clearly shows that India's GDP size is much smaller than the US economy. And because we have large number of poor people, you can see as per the BPL estimates, we have 21.9% of people in India who are living below poverty line. And surprisingly, can you see the Gini coefficient of India? Gini coefficient of US? Like I said, increase in Gini coefficient means increase in income inequality. So which country is more unequal, US or India? It is US. So considering our stage of growth and development, where should India focus upon? India should focus upon increasing its GDP size. So can you see the size? India should focus on increasing GDP size, because our size of GDP is still small. Because it is still small, we have huge potential for growth and development. Higher GDP will lead to higher per capita income, and because of which we can pull out a large number of people out of poverty. Can I say the good thing here, that by increasing our GDP size, we can pull out a large number of people out of poverty, which means people will have access to basic services like education, health, sanitation, housing, and so on. So we have to focus more upon increasing our GDP size. This is what is this particular chapter highlighting. I hope this is clear, everyone. Yes, I hope this is clear. Shashank, as far as the poverty is concerned, that poverty that we said is multidimensional poverty. Multidimensional poverty has got reduced from 29% to 11% as per the Niti Aayog. But this estimate is about the BPL estimates. BPL estimates in India. The BPL estimates in India says that 22% of people are living below poverty line. That is what is a BPL estimate, and that estimate is as per the year 2011-12. Okay. So we have covered inclusive growth and development. Now there is a sustainable development. With respect to the next theme of sustainable development, can you see there are two important announcements. One announcement is for electric mobility, and the other major announcement is for bio-manufacturing and bio-foundry. So here what we should do, we should know initiatives of the government for electric mobility and the topic of bio-manufacturing and bio-foundry. That is what I'm going to discuss now. Okay, before that, please have a look at the question. Question number 35. Which of the following is not the Panchamrit goals of India's climate action? All of us know that India has submitted NDC, Nationally Determined Contribution. India has highlighted the Panchamrit. Can you guess what is not the Panchamrit of India's climate action? Good, Abhishek. Yes. If you see the Panchamrit goals, we have to reach 500 gigawatt of non-fossil energy capacity by 2030. Right now it is 180 megawatt, 1.8 lakh megawatt. We have to increase it to 500. Second one is 50% of energy requirements from renewable energy. Reduction of total carbon emissions by 1 billion tons. Carbon intensity of the economy should get reduced. and the target of net zero emissions by 2070. Very factual. Please remember this Panchamrit goals. It might be asked in UPSC prelims, just like the way I have framed this particular question. Now, what we're going to do is, with respect to electric mobility, I'm pretty sure most of you know that there are two important schemes of the government to promote electric mobility. Number one is the FAME scheme, and number two is the PM e-bus Seva, right? As far as FAME scheme is concerned, all the details about the FAME scheme I have incorporated in the PPT. I hope that you should be able to go to the FAME scheme and then attempt this particular question. My focus is on discussing this PM e-bus Seva, in particular the concept of payment security mechanism, which the finance minister has announced in this year's budget with respect to PM e-bus Seva. So you can see here, with respect to FAME scheme, all the necessary details I have incorporated. I hope you should be able to go through these details. My focus is on PM e-bus Seva scheme, which was recently launched in the year 2023. What is this PM e-bus Seva? Let's try to understand. Number one, under PM e-bus Seva, we are trying to introduce electric buses in 169 cities across India. Electric buses will be introduced in 169 cities across India. And these electric buses will be introduced in what? PPP mode, public-private partnership mode. And for introducing electric buses in public-private partnership mode, the central government has committed a central assistance for 10,000 electric buses under PM e-bus Seva. So the question here is, what kind of PPP model are we using in introducing the electric buses? And when we say central assistance, what is this central assistance provided for? And more importantly, what is this payment security mechanism which was announced in this year's budget? These things are important, and that is what I'm going to cover one by one, and then we'll go back to solve that the practice question on e-bus Seva. Think here, the first thing, the public-private partnership model that we are going to follow is OPEX model, operational expenditure model. OP, operational, EX, expenditure, operational expenditure model. Under this operational expenditure model, look at the role of the private sector. What is private sector required to do? Number one, private sector is required to procure electric buses. It means private sector should buy electric buses. Private sector should operate electric buses in those 169 cities. Private sector should also make investment in associated infrastructure such as charging. And private sector will also collect the fares from operation of this electric buses from the passengers. Example, I'll just show you. Now this is just an example to give you more clarity. Okay. Now let's say cost of operation of electric bus. Now to keep it simple, let's say cost of operation per kilometer. Cost of operation per kilometer is rupees 10. So it's like private sector who is running these electric buses. This private sector is spending rupees 10 for every 1 kilometer of running of electric buses. This 10 rupees could be on, including the buying of buses, operation of buses, infrastructure such as charging, and so on. Think here, scenario 1. In this scenario 1, let's say it is collecting fares. And let's say it's collecting fares of almost around rupees 5 per kilometer. On an average, it is collecting rupees 5 per kilometer. Here, central government will provide a assistance. This central government assistance is fixed. It is fixed. And in fact, the central government assistance is determined through bidding process. Different entities will place a bid as to how much central assistance they need for every 1 kilometer. So lowest bidder will get that particular project. Now, just as an example, let's say the central assistance in this particular case is fixed at rupees 7 per kilometer. Think here. For the private sector, it's spending rupees 10 per kilometer as a cost of operation. But look how much money it has recovered. 5 rupees it has recovered from fares, and central government has given assistance of 7 plus 5. Total money which has recovered from operation is rupees 12 per kilometer, which means how much is its profit? Its profit is rupees 2 per kilometer. This is how they will make profit. But we know that it is not necessary that it will always make profit. What if the cost, the fares which it is collecting is less? Example, let's say scenario 2. In scenario 2, it is collecting fares of just rupees 2 per kilometer, just 2 rupees. Obviously, central government will always provide assistance, and that central government assistance is always fixed. That does not change irrespective of the fares. Please remember, irrespective of fares, the central government assistance is always fixed, and that is determined through bidding. In this case also, the central government will provide assistance of rupees 7 per kilometer. So total money recovered in this particular case, if you observe, it is 7 plus 2, which is 9 rupees per kilometer. And here its cost of operation is rupees 10 per kilometer. So here it is incurring a loss of rupees 1. 1 rupee is a loss which it is incurring. I hope you are getting this point, everyone. Now think, as long as it is getting profit, no problem. But if it is incurring a loss, don't you think the very fact that these entities can incur loss will discourage the private sector from coming forward and investing in all of these infrastructure projects, including procurement of electric buses? So in this particular case, this loss of 1 rupee should have to be paid by the concerned state government. So whenever the electric buses are incurring losses, that loss is to be paid by the state government. Is that clear? Now, the problem here is there might be situations where the financial position of the state government is poor. If the financial position of state government is poor, can I say that the state government might not be in a position to pay for this loss of the electric buses? That is when the state governments are unable to pay for the losses of electric buses, that is when the central government will come into play. And central government will provide for what is called as payment security mechanism. Look at this word, payment security mechanism. This is what the finance minister has introduced in this year's budget. So here the government is saying, if the state government does not pay you 1 rupee, this loss, I will pay you that particular 1 rupee, and that 1 rupee which central government is paying to the private sector, central government will recover that 1 rupee from the state government at a later date. It's not a free money which the central is giving. As of now, central is giving 1 rupee to the electric buses, and that 1 rupee will recover from the state government. That is what is payment security mechanism. Is this clear, everyone? Please let me know if you have understood payment security mechanism. Okay, thank you. So the details I have just highlighted here. Whatever I explained, I put it here in the form of important bullet points. You can just go through that later. So based upon that, let's look at the prelims based question for practice. Prelims MCQ number 37. Consider the following statements related to PM e-bus Seva. It provides for introduction of electric buses in the urban areas through PPP mode. Yes, it is correct. The center provides for financial assistance for operation of electric buses, which is correct. Then the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways is a nodal ministry for the implementation of this particular scheme. If you see, the nodal ministry for implementation of PM E-Bus Seva is not Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. It is the Ministry of Urban Development and Housing. So right answer in this case is only 2. Vipin, here you must understand, it is not always that the private entity which is operating electric buses will always have a kind of zero-sum game. That is, operating cost and the cost it recovers will always be same. In most of the cases, the scenario 1 will be more appropriate, where it will be making more profit, right? Only when it incurs a loss, to ensure that there is no loss by the private sector, the state will give a compensation. That's the only thing. Okay. Okay. Apart from that, apart from E-Bus Seva, you have this topic of bioeconomy. Now, what is bioeconomy? Bioeconomy basically means production of goods and services using plants, animals, microorganisms. So if you're able to produce certain goods by using plants, animals, and microorganisms, that is referred to as bioeconomy. Can you think what can be the products in the bioeconomy? The best examples of the products in the bioeconomy, can you see here, can be biofuels, biofuels such as bioethanol and biodiesel, bioplastics, biopharmaceuticals like vaccines, diagnostic kits, medicines. In agriculture, it could include biofertilizers and BT cotton. Renewable energy, it could mean biomass, power generation, and biogas, right? All of this constitutes our bioeconomy. If you see the present status of bioeconomy, the present status of bioeconomy is our bioeconomy has increased to $137 billion, accounting for 4% of India's GDP. And our target is to reach $150 billion by 2025, which hopefully will soon reach. And our next target is to make it $300 billion by 2030. This is the present status as highlighted by the India Bioeconomy Report 2023. Think what can be the benefits of promotion of bioeconomy. If you promote bioeconomy, the biggest benefit we can see in the agriculture sector. Right now, India is one of the largest consumer of chemical fertilizers. We are importing chemical fertilizers such as NPK from other countries. Because of large-scale utilization of chemical fertilizers, there is a decline in soil fertility, plus our import bill has already increased. So instead of using chemical fertilizers, if you start using biofertilizers, it can promote environment-friendly and sustainable agriculture practices in agriculture, right? Same way, we can have health security by production of vaccines and medicines. We can ensure environmental sustainability through reduction in emissions through biofuels. We can ensure energy security through reduction in the import of oil, and can promote growth and development, like create jobs, promote Make in India, push innovation and development. Based upon the benefits of bioeconomy, government has taken a lot of initiatives. One of the biggest initiative I hope you must be knowing is the National Biofuel Policy, where the target is to blend 20% ethanol with petroleum products, that is petrol, and the target is by 2025. We have come up with Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council. It's a separate institution called as BIRAC. This institution works under the Department of Science and Technology in order to strengthen the biotechnology sector in India. Then we have launched National Biopharma Mission for the holistic development of biopharmaceutical industry. We have launched a portal called as Biological Research Regulatory Approval Portal. And as the name suggests, this is one nation, one portal where all the necessary approvals, clearances for undertaking research and development in biotechnology you can take through this single portal. Then we have set up a separate program called as BioNest. This program is implemented by BIRAC and it is supporting and nurturing the startups. These are some of the initiatives. Because we have set up an ambitious target to increase the size of a bioeconomy to $300 billion by 2030, in this year's budget, the finance minister has announced that a new scheme of biomanufacturing and biofoundry will be launched. Now, what is biofoundry? Biofoundry means providing all the necessary infrastructure so that we can undertake biomanufacturing. So that is what is biofoundry. Now just look at the mind map. Now where will this mind map fit in? Where can this be asked in the UPSC? You can be asked in the UPSC mains, especially in GS paper 3. In GS paper 3, you have environment as well as science and tech plus economy. So when you look at this bioeconomy, it's a combination of three things. It is environment, science and tech, and economy. So you can get a question about bioeconomy, its significance and initiatives. There you can use this particular mind map to write answer. I hope this is clear, right? Now coming to the last theme, the last theme is external sector. As far as external sector is concerned, no major announcements in the external sector except the fact that finance minister has announced that we will sign bilateral investment treaties to attract more FDI. The finance minister has said FDI should be ideally called as First Develop India. First Develop India. So that more amount of FDI comes into India and which leads to growth and development. So we're going to enter into treaties with other countries so that we get more FDI inflows. This is a major announcement. As far as these two things are concerned, Indian economy a review, that is India's external sector, and re-examining narrative, which is a review of credit rating agencies. These two things are actually more important from the perspective of mains. So what I have done is to make your job easier, I've just incorporated the details here. You can just see all of these points I've incorporated in one particular point, everything related to external sector here, the present status. And not just that, I've also incorporated this mains aspect, that is, does India's sovereign credit rating reflects its fundamentals? This is in news, that is why it is important. So all of these things I've incorporated. This is more important from the perspective of mains. So what I would suggest to you, the PPT I will be sharing with you. Please go through the PPT. Try to understand the PPT, the content which is included in the PPT. Start revising it, right? So this is what I would say as far as this session is concerned. Do you have any doubts with respect to whatever things we have covered? Please let me know. Please feel free to ask if you have any doubts in the session that we have covered. Okay. Fine then. If you are all clear with all of your doubts, so I'm going to end this particular session here. All right. So far as the interim budget discussion is concerned, we had 3 sessions on the interim budget. The first session we covered as a bird's eye view. The second session was more with respect to the theme of basic overview of economy, infrastructure, as well as the theme of agriculture. In the third, we have covered the other aspects, right? So these are the things which I have already covered. Uppin Phillips curve, it basically shows the nature of relationship between inflation and unemployment. So basically, if you see the Phillips curve says that here along the x-axis you'll have unemployment, and then there is inflation. So it says that as the rate of inflation increases, can you see here, as the rate of inflation increases, the level of unemployment in the country will reduce. So it shows the inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment, right? Dilip, yes, it will be part of India's forex reserves. Yes. Okay. All the PPTs I'll be sharing with you. Do not worry. Okay. Thank you so much. The PPTs will be shared. Phillips curve directly proportional to employment. No. Directly proportional to employment. Yeah. In that way, you're saying yes. So as the rate of inflation increases, unemployment will reduce and employment will increase. Yes. Fine. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. It was good to take your session. Fine. So if you have any doubts, anytime you can always reach out to me. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the session here. Thank you.